The night was quiet on the human colony outpost. Soldiers sat around a small fire, their armor laid beside them, their rifles stacked in a corner. The war with alien races had been going on for decades, and laughter was rare. But tonight, one young soldier named Daniel found himself in the mood to break the silence. He was tall but not strong, quick with words but not famous for bravery. He had been fighting for years. Yet deep inside, he still dreamed of something more than endless battles. He wanted warmth, a family, maybe even love. But in war, those things were jokes. So when his friends teased him, asking what he wanted most if he survived the next mission, Daniel laughed and raised his hand. "I don't care about medals. I don't care about glory, I just want a wife. Someone to make me feel alive again," he said. And the other soldiers roared with laughter. They laughed because no soldier dreamed of such things. Not anymore. They laughed because in this cold universe, love was weaker than war. Or so they thought, but in the shadows beyond the firelight, something moved, something ancient, something watching. Daniel did not know that his words had reached ears not meant for human jokes. Hidden in the darkness stood a figure taller than any man, wrapped in silver armor that glowed faintly like moonlight. Her eyes were crimson, her presence sharp like a blade. She was no human. She was a vampire warbride. The vampire clans were the terror of humanity. They were not mindless beasts. They were warriors, rulers, conquerors, and among them the warbrides were the most feared. Legendary female champions who fought beside their chosen mates, but never had one chosen a human, never. Daniel's joke had been nothing but words, yet those words echoed with strange power. To the vampire hiding in the shadows, they were not a joke, they were a call. The fire cracked. The soldiers kept laughing, but Daniel noticed the air had grown colder. His skin prickled as if unseen eyes burned into him. He shook his head, thinking it was just nerves, just the war haunting him again. That night he went to his bunk, still chuckling about the joke, still shaking his head at his friends. But as he drifted to sleep, he dreamed of crimson eyes. He dreamed of hands reaching out. He dreamed of a voice whispering in the dark, "You asked for a wife, human." "I will answer." Morning came with alarms. The base shook, lights flickered, soldiers ran. Daniel grabbed his rifle, his heart pounding. Enemy attack, he thought. But when he stepped outside the barracks, he froze. There she stood, tall as a giant, armored like a goddess of war, her black hair flowing, her eyes glowing red like fire. The soldiers raised their rifles, but none fired, for fear and awe froze them. The vampire warbride walked straight to Daniel, her boots echoing against the metal floor. Her gaze locked on him, her voice like thunder yet smooth as silk. "You wished for a wife," she said, "and I have chosen to be that wife." Silence fell across the base. No one laughed now, no one breathed. Daniel's mouth went dry, his heart hammered in his chest. He wanted to run, he wanted to speak, but no words came. This was impossible. Vampires hated humans, they slaughtered them. Yet here was one of their champions declaring a bond. "Wait, this is a mistake," Daniel stammered. "I was joking." But the warbride tilted her head, her crimson eyes unblinking. "Jokes are lies dressed as truth," she said. "And I see the truth inside you. You are lonely. You are hungry for more than war. You called for a wife, and now you are mine," the other soldiers whispered, some in fear, some in disbelief. "She's binding him," one hissed. "She's claiming him as her own," another muttered. This was something unheard of. Something dangerous. Daniel stepped back. But the warbride reached out her armored hand. Her touch was cold yet burning. She pressed her clawed fingers against his chest, and in that moment he felt it. A surge of power, a strange mark burning into his skin. The vampire whispered in his ear, "Our blood oath begins at dawn. Prepare yourself." "Husband," Daniel staggered, his friends stared. The world itself seemed to stop. With a single joke, his life had changed. With a single careless laugh, he had been chosen. And far beyond the human base, across the vampire clans, across the stars, whispers spread. A warbride had chosen a human, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The base had never been so silent after the warbride's arrival. Even the alarms faded into the background. Soldiers stood frozen, rifles in hand, but no one dared to fire. Their enemy had walked straight into their stronghold, not with claws bared, but with a claim. Daniel felt his knees weaken. The mark on his chest still burned from her touch. His mind screamed that this was madness. A vampire warbride was a nightmare made flesh. Yet she had spoken to him like a vow, calling him husband, declaring him chosen.
"Who are you?" Daniel managed, his voice shaking.
"Why me?" The Warbride's eyes glowed. Her crimson gaze cut through him as though she could see every secret he had ever tried to bury. "I am Seraphina," she said, her voice low, steady, and full of command. "Warbride of the Crimson Clans, champion of 1,000 battles. I have crossed blood and shadow to find you," the soldiers whispered in panic. Some prayed under their breath, others cursed. One officer finally found his courage. "You are trespassing on human territory," he shouted. "Stand down or face fire." His hands shook on the trigger. Seraphina did not even glance at him. Her gaze never left Daniel. "I care nothing for your threats. Human soldiers," she said coldly. "The oath has been spoken and the bond has begun. He belongs to me." Gasps spread through the ranks. No one had ever heard a vampire speak of belonging in such a way. For vampires, humans were prey. Cattle, at best prisoners of war, never partners, never mates. Daniel's thoughts spun in chaos. He wanted to deny it, to push her away. Yet his chest burned with strange energy. The mark she had given him pulsed like a second heartbeat. He could feel her presence inside him, as if her shadow had wrapped around his soul. "You don't understand," he said, his voice breaking. "I never asked for this. I never wanted this." Seraphina's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile, not quite a threat. "Desire is not always spoken. Daniel," she said softly. "Your heart cried out and I answered. My kind do not ignore such calls. I chose you because you chose me first." "Even if you did not know it," the soldiers shouted again, their weapons raised, this time louder, angrier. "She's manipulating him," someone cried. "She's trying to take control," another barked. "Shoot her," but Daniel raised his hand without thinking, stopping them. His body moved before his mind caught up, as if Seraphina's will guided him. "Don't," he said. "If you shoot, it will only make things worse." The officer glared at him. "Worse than this," he snapped. "She's binding you, soldier. Do you even understand what that means?" Daniel shook his head, but Seraphina answered for him. "It means he is mine," she declared, her voice booming like thunder across the base. "Our fates are one, my blood is his life is mine. And anyone who dares to take him from me will drown in crimson." Her words sent a chill down every spine, and yet, beneath the terror, Daniel felt something else, something strange. It was not love, not yet, but it was not hate either. It was a tether, a force pulling him toward her, a force that whispered he was no longer alone. The officer gave the order, "Open fire!" But before a single shot was fired, Seraphina moved. She was faster than sight. One heartbeat she stood before Daniel. The next she stood among the soldiers, their rifles torn from their hands, their knees buckling as she knocked them aside with nothing but a wave of her arm. The soldiers lay on the ground. Stunned but not dead, she had spared them, though she could have slaughtered them all. Daniel stared at her, confusion swirling. "Why didn't you kill them?" he asked. His voice unsteady, Seraphina turned back to him, her crimson eyes softer now, almost tired. "Because you are human," she said. "And if I am to be your warbride, then I must honor what you are. You value mercy, do you not, Daniel?" The base was in chaos. Soldiers scrambling, officers shouting, but no one dared to strike her again. They had seen enough to know she was untouchable. Daniel wanted to run, but his legs would not move. He wanted to scream, but his throat was dry. He wanted to wake up, but this was no dream. This was real. Seraphina stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "You have a choice. Human," she whispered, "accept me, and we will stand together against fate itself. Deny me, and I will still remain. For our bond cannot be broken, not by you, not by them, not by war." Daniel's heart pounded, his mind rebelled, but deep down, in a corner of his soul he never admitted existed, a dangerous thought bloomed. What if she's right? The soldiers dragged themselves back up, still aiming rifles, still watching, but no one fired. For they knew one truth now, a truth that would change everything. A vampire warbride had chosen a human, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The mark on Daniel's chest refused to fade. It glowed faintly under his shirt, pulsing like a second heart. Every beat reminded him that something inside him had changed, something he did not ask for, something he could not escape. He tried to scrub it away in the washroom sink. He tried to scratch at it with trembling fingers, but the mark only burned brighter. Lines of crimson light weaving across his skin like living fire. He gasped and stumbled back, clutching the basin. From the doorway, Seraphina watched in silence, her crimson eyes calm, her voice steady. "You cannot wash it away," she said. "It is the bond. Our lives are tied. Your blood has answered mine." Daniel spun toward her, fear and anger twisting in his chest. "I never agreed to this," he shouted. "I never wanted this." Serafina stepped closer, her silver armor catching the dim light, her presence filling the small room. "And yet it is done," she replied. "The oath is sealed, your joke became a vow, and vows are sacred among my kind." He shook his head, his breath ragged. No, I won't be your husband. I won't be your slave." Her gaze sharpened, but her voice softened. "Not a slave," she whispered. "A partner, a shield, a bond that cannot break." Daniel wanted to curse, wanted to push her away, but when she stepped close, the burning in his chest eased. The pain dulled, his heart steadied. It was as if her nearness calmed the fire she had placed within him. Outside, the base buzzed with unrest. Soldiers whispered of betrayal. Officers debated whether to lock Daniel away. Some wanted him executed, others wanted to use him as bait. The entire outpost had become a storm of suspicion. That night, while the arguments raged, Serafina led Daniel to the open training field. Under the cold stars, she drew a blade longer than he was tall, the metal black, the edge glowing faintly red. "If we are to survive, you must learn to fight with the bond," she said, her voice firm. "The blood oath grants you strength, but only if you accept it." Daniel laughed bitterly. "I'm no champion, I'm just a soldier." Barely holding on, Serafina's eyes narrowed. "Then let me show you," she said, and before he could answer, she lunged, her strike fast as lightning. Daniel barely raised his rifle in defense. The clash sent a shockwave through his body. His arms trembled, but he did not fall. For the first time, he realized her strike should have broken him in two, but the mark on his chest blazed. His muscles surged with strange power. He held his ground. Serafina pulled back, her expression unreadable. "Do you see?" she asked. "You are not weak." "Not anymore." Daniel stared at his hands, still trembling. This isn't me," he whispered. "This is you. Your power." She shook her head slowly, her black hair falling over her armor. "No, Daniel, it is us. The bond shares what we are. You carry part of me now as I carry part of you." Before he could respond, a sound ripped through the night, a scream, sharp and furious. From beyond the walls of the base, shadows moved, dark shapes leaping across the perimeter. The alarm blared. Soldiers shouted, "Vampires! Incoming!" Daniel froze, but Serafina's eyes hardened. "They come for me," she hissed. "They call me traitor for choosing you." Figures vaulted over the barriers. Vampires, their eyes glowing like fire in the dark. Their teeth bared, their claws flashing. They landed with grace and fury, their voices filled with rage. "Serafina, oathbreaker!" they cried. "You shame our blood with a human." The soldiers panicked, firing wildly, bullets cutting the night, but the vampires moved too fast, too fierce. They tore through defenses like paper. Serafina stepped in front of Daniel, her blade raised, her voice thunderous. "Stand behind me, husband." Daniel's heart pounded, fear and disbelief choking him, but the mark on his chest burned hot, pulling him forward. "No," he said, his voice cracking. "If they're here for me too, then I fight." Serafina glanced at him, surprise flickering in her crimson eyes, but she gave a small nod. "Then fight with me," she said. The battle was chaos, shadows and gunfire clashing under the stars. Daniel swung his rifle like a blade, his strength unnatural, his movements sharper, faster. He fought not like himself, but like something more. Every strike echoed with the bond's fire. By his side, Serafina moved like a storm, her blade carving through enemies, her voice roaring in defiance. Together they cut a path, their rhythm strange yet perfect, as if they had fought together all their lives. The other vampires screamed, "She has fallen. She has bound herself to prey." Their fury endless, but still they could not break the pair. At last the ground was littered with ash, the night heavy with smoke. The surviving attackers fled into the shadows, their voices carrying a promise. "This is not over, traitor. The clans will come. The clans will kill you both." Daniel staggered, his chest heaving, his rifle slick with blood, his arms trembling from exhaustion, yet he still stood, the mark on his chest glowing like a brand. Serafina sheathed her blade, her crimson eyes fixed on him. "Now you understand," she said. "The bond is not a prison, it is survival. Without it you would be dead, with it you are something greater." Daniel wanted to argue, to deny it, but the truth burned in his veins. He had fought like never before. He had lived because of her, because of them, and deep inside a terrifying thought grew. Maybe the bond was not only survival, maybe it was destiny. The battlefield was quiet after the attack. Ashes scattered across the training field. The smell of smoke and blood filled the air. Soldiers gathered around the broken walls, their faces pale, their eyes wide. They had seen too much. Daniel stood with his rifle still in hand, his body trembling, his chest glowing faintly with the bond's mark. Serafina stood tall beside him, her blade dripping with dark blood, crimson eyes scanning the shadows for more enemies. The silence broke with a voice full of anger. The human commander stepped forward, his jaw tight, his hand gripping his pistol. "You brought this on us, Daniel," he barked. "Her presence, your bond. It's a curse. They will keep coming. They will never stop. Not until you are dead." Daniel's throat tightened. "I didn't ask for this," he said, his voice low. "I never wanted her. I never wanted any of this." But Serafina raised her chin, her gaze burning into the commander. "Do not blame him," she said, her voice sharp. "It was my choice, my oath, my bond, if you want blood." "Take mine." The commander's hand twitched on the pistol. Soldiers whispered nervously. No one dared to pull the trigger. Fear held them. Anger burned in them, but they had seen her fight. They knew killing her would not be so simple. "Lock them up," the commander ordered at last, "both of them." "Until we decide what to do." Daniel's heart sank. Soldiers surrounded them, rifles raised. He wanted to resist, but Serafina touched his arm gently. Shaking her head, "Not now," she whispered. "Save your fight for when it matters." They were dragged into the barracks, doors sealed with iron, guards stationed outside. Inside the dim room, Daniel sat on the floor. His head in his hands, Serafina stood by the window, watching the night sky with unreadable eyes. "Why did you choose me?" Daniel asked suddenly, his voice breaking the silence. "Out of everyone, why me? Why risk war for me?" Serafina turned slowly, her crimson eyes softer now. "Because you are different," she said. "When I heard your words, they were not like the words of other men. You did not speak of conquest or victory. You spoke of longing, of wanting a wife, of wanting something beyond blood and war. It stirred something in me I thought long dead." Daniel shook his head, laughing bitterly. "It was a joke, a stupid joke. Jokes hide truth," she said firmly. "And your truth called to me." Before he could reply, the sound of boots echoed outside, whispers, then shouts. "The vampires are regrouping," a soldier cried. "They're coming again." Panic filled the outpost. Alarms blared once more. The guards at their door cursed. "We should kill them now, end this before the enemy breaches," one said. But before he could act, the wall exploded inward, fire and smoke swallowing the room. Daniel was thrown to the floor. Serafina shielded him with her body, debris raining down. Through the smoke came more vampires, their armor black as night, their voices full of fury. "Traitor," they roared at Serafina. "You bind yourself to prey, you spit on our clans. You will die with him." Serafina rose, her blade drawn, her stance unyielding. "Then let me die fighting," she answered. Her voice a storm. Daniel scrambled to his feet, coughing through the dust. His chest burned hot. The bond surged, pulling him to her side, his rifle heavy in his hands but his heart steady. "I'm not leaving you," he said, his voice firm. They fought back to back. Steel and fire, rifle and blade, enemies closing from all sides. The barracks shook with the clash of battle. Human soldiers fired wildly from the broken walls, some hitting vampires, some nearly hitting Daniel. The chaos was endless at last, with bodies strewn across the ground. The surviving vampires pulled back, their voices echoing with hatred. "The clans will not forgive this, Serafina. The clans will hunt you until your blood stains the stars." Then they vanished into the night, shadows fading. Daniel leaned against the wall, his breath ragged. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice weak. "They'll keep coming. Humans don't trust us. Vampires want us dead. We have nowhere." Serafina sheathed her blade, stepping close, her crimson eyes fixed on him. "Then we make our own path," she said quietly. "If both sides hate us, then we stand together. We find allies where none exist." The commander stormed in, face twisted with rage. "You brought war to my outpost," he spat. "You're a danger to all of us. You're finished, Daniel. You're no soldier of humanity anymore. You're a traitor." The word cut deep. Daniel felt the sting sharper than any wound. But Serafina stepped between them, her presence fierce. "Call him traitor again," she growled. "And you will not live to speak another word." The commander's face paled. Soldiers raised rifles, tension thick in the air. Then suddenly another voice broke through the chaos. Calm, low, unexpected. "Stop." A figure emerged from the smoke. A human officer Daniel had known from past campaigns. Older, scarred, weary. His name was Captain Hale. Unlike the others, his gaze held no hate, only calculation. Killing them won't solve this, Hale said. If the clans want her dead, maybe that means she knows something worth keeping her alive. Seraphina's eyes narrowed. And what is it you want, human captain? Hale's lips curved faintly. I want this war to end, he said, and maybe, just maybe, you two are the key. Daniel stared, torn between hope and suspicion, hunted by his own kind, hunted by the vampires, and now offered alliance by a man who saw opportunity in the bond. The fire of battle still smoked around them, the night heavy with danger, yet one truth became clear. Daniel and Seraphina were no longer just soldier and vampire, no longer just enemies or strangers. They were hunted lovers forced into a bond, searching for allies in a galaxy that wanted them dead. And somewhere deep inside, Daniel felt the bond whisper again. Not of fear, not of anger, but of destiny. The night after the battle was heavy with silence. The human outpost lay in ruins, broken walls, burned ground, wounded soldiers moaning in pain. The survivors worked with trembling hands to rebuild defenses, but fear weighed heavier than stone. Daniel sat near the barracks, his rifle across his knees, his eyes hollow, the bond on his chest glowing faintly in the dark. Every beat of it reminded him that he was no longer just human. He was something in between, bound to Seraphina, tied to a destiny he never asked for. Seraphina stood a short distance away, crimson eyes fixed on the horizon, her armor scratched, her blade resting in the earth beside her. She looked like a statue, unmovable, unreadable. But Daniel could sense something deeper, a weight inside her, a silence that was not strength but sorrow. Finally he spoke, his voice quiet. Why Seraphina? Why me? Why risk everything? Why fight your own people for me? For a long moment she did not answer. Then she turned, her eyes softer than he had ever seen them. You want truth, she said slowly. Then you will hear it. She walked closer, sitting across from him, her voice low, steady, carrying the weight of centuries. I was not always a warbride, she began. Once I was a daughter, a sister, a wife. Daniel blinked, shocked. He had never imagined a vampire speaking of such things, never thought of them as anything but warriors and predators. I was married long ago, she continued, her gaze distant, to a warrior of my clan, strong, proud, loyal. He fought for the honor of our people. He died in battle against your kind. And when I begged my leaders to seek peace, they laughed, they mocked, they called me weak. They said I would serve better as a warbride than as a widow. And so I was given the blood oath, my life bound to endless war. Her voice hardened, her fists clenched. For centuries I fought. For centuries I killed. For centuries I buried the memory of the life I once dreamed of. Until your words reached me, Daniel's throat tightened. He remembered his joke, his careless wish for a wife, a real wife, not just a soldier's prize. My words, he whispered. That's why you chose me. Seraphina nodded slowly. Yes, Daniel, because your words were not of conquest, not of glory, but of longing, of love, of a life beyond blood. They reminded me of who I was before war stole everything from me. You think it was a joke, but to me it was a promise, a call I could not ignore. Daniel stared at her, his chest heavy, his heart torn between fear and something else, something dangerous. He wanted to hate her for binding him, but hearing her story cracked the walls of his anger. For the first time he saw not a monster, but a woman, scarred by war, chained by fate, longing for something more. Just like him, before he could speak, footsteps approached. Captain Hale stepped out of the shadows, his expression calm but sharp. Touching story, he said, but there's more. Isn't there, Seraphina? The clans don't send assassins for love alone. They fear something you know, something you carry. Seraphina's eyes narrowed, her hand tightening on her blade. You see too much, Captain, she said coldly. Daniel looked between them, confusion twisting in his gut. What is he talking about? He asked. What do you know? Seraphina, for the first time she hesitated, her voice lower, heavy. There is a weapon, she admitted. Forged in the ancient wars, hidden for centuries. A weapon that could end this conflict forever. The clans guard its secret. But I learned of it, and when I chose you, they feared I would reveal it. They feared a bond between human and vampire could unlock it. Daniel's eyes widened. A weapon that could end the war, he said. Why didn't you tell me? Her gaze softened. Because you are not ready, she said. Because once you know, you cannot turn back. The path will consume you. It will consume us both. Captain Hale stepped closer, his voice sharp. Then tell us now. We need that weapon. Humanity needs it. Give it to us, and maybe we can finally stop bleeding. Seraphina rose slowly, her presence towering, her crimson eyes glowing with defiance. "You think ending a war is as simple as swinging a sword," she said. "But this weapon is no tool, it is alive, it feeds on blood. It binds to those who dare wield it. And only a bond like ours could wake it." Daniel's stomach twisted, his voice shaking. "You mean us?" She nodded. "Yes, Daniel, us. Together we could awaken it. But once awakened, it will demand everything. Our strength, our will, even our lives. There is no victory without sacrifice." Silence hung heavy. Hale's eyes burned with hunger for the weapon. Daniel's heart pounded with fear. Seraphina's face carried the calm of someone who had already accepted her fate. At last Daniel spoke, his voice raw. "So that's why they're hunting us, not just because of the bond, but because together we could end everything." "Yes," Seraphina said simply. "And they will not stop, neither your people nor mine. For both sides fear what we could become." Daniel's hands clenched into fists. His world spinning, he thought back to his joke, to the laughter around the fire, to the words that had changed everything, and he realized now that there was no going back. He was bound to Seraphina not just by blood, not just by accident, but by destiny. And the secret she carried was a fire waiting to burn the galaxy. The morning sky above the outpost was gray, heavy with clouds. The smell of smoke still lingered after the last attack. Soldiers moved in silence, their eyes wary, their weapons never far from reach. But their fear was no longer only for the vampires outside. Now it was for the bond inside. Daniel walked through the ruined halls with Seraphina at his side. Whispers followed him. Traitor, cursed enemy. He heard it all but kept walking. The mark on his chest glowed faintly under his uniform, reminding him every step that he was no longer only human. Captain Hale led them to the command chamber. Officers stood around a broken table, maps scattered across it, their faces grim, their voices sharp. Daniel could feel the hostility in the room like a knife against his skin. "She carries the knowledge of a weapon," one officer spat, pointing at Seraphina. "And he is bound to her. We should take them both, bleed them if we must, extract the truth. Humanity's survival depends on it." Daniel's fist clenched, his voice low but steady. "You're talking about torture. You're talking about killing her. I won't let you." The officer sneered. "You don't have a choice, soldier. You're compromised." "You don't belong to us anymore." Seraphina stood tall, her crimson eyes unyielding. "Try to take me, and you will learn what true death feels like," she said coldly, her hand resting on the hilt of her blade. Captain Hale raised a hand, silencing the room. "Enough," he said, his voice calm. "This is not about loyalty or pride. This is about survival, if what she says is true. If there is a weapon that can end this war, then humanity cannot ignore it." Daniel turned to him, his voice desperate. "You don't understand. The weapon is alive, it demands blood, it demands sacrifice. If we awaken it, it could destroy everything. Not just vampires, not just humans, everything." But Hale's eyes burned with resolve. "Better to risk destruction than live in endless war," he said. "Better to gamble everything than keep bleeding." The room erupted in shouts, officers arguing, soldiers murmuring. Daniel felt the walls closing in. He looked at Seraphina, her calm expression hiding the storm within, and he realized the choice was not about the weapon. It was about trust. Suddenly, soldiers moved, rifles raised, surrounding them. Hale's voice sharp. "Daniel, stand aside. Hand her over. Let us take what we need. Prove to us you are still human." The words cut deep. "Sharper than any blade, prove you are still human." Daniel's heart pounded, his chest burned with the bond's fire. He looked at Seraphina, standing silent, ready to fight, ready to die, her crimson eyes meeting his, and he knew his choice. "No," Daniel said, his voice firm, his hands raised but steady. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The soldiers hesitated, shock rippling through them. The officers cursed. "He's lost," one spat. "He's not one of us anymore." Hale's gaze hardened, disappointment in his eyes but also respect. "So you choose her," he said slowly. "Over your own kind." Daniel's throat tightened, but he did not falter. "I choose what's right," he said. "I choose not to be a monster, not to spill innocent blood just because we're afraid. I choose her, because she chose me when no one else would." The tension snapped. Rifles clicked, soldiers ready to fire. Seraphina's blade flashed in the dim light, her voice low. "Then we fight," she whispered. But before the first shot was fired, the walls shook. Alarms blared. The sky outside thundered with engines. From above came the sound of dropships, heavy and cold. Reinforcements from Central Command. Voices shouted through the comms. Secure the traitor, secure the vampire. Orders from High Command. Chaos erupted, soldiers turned, orders screamed. Daniel grabbed Serafina's hand without thinking, pulling her toward the shattered wall. "We have to go," he said. They ran through smoke and rubble, bullets tearing the air. Serafina cut down those who blocked their path. Daniel fired back with sharp precision, the Bond's fire guiding his aim. They fought their way out, hunted by their own people, hunted by the clan beyond the walls, hunted by both sides. At last they stumbled into the wilderness beyond the outpost. The forest dark, the air heavy, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. They collapsed against the roots of a great tree, their breaths ragged, their bodies battered. Daniel pressed his forehead against the bark, his voice hoarse. "They'll never stop, Serafina, not them, not your people, not anyone." Serafina sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder, her voice quiet but unyielding. "Then we stop running. Daniel, we stop hiding if both sides fear us. Then we use that fear. If they hunt us, then we strike first. We choose our own fate." Daniel looked at her, his heart torn, fear clawing at him, but deep inside the Bond whispered again, "Stronger now, clearer than ever, you are not prey, you are not alone. You are something more." The choice of humanity was made, and Daniel had chosen against it. He had chosen Serafina. He had chosen the Bond. He had chosen a path that would either save the galaxy or burn it to ashes, and far above in the dark of space, both human fleets and vampire clans prepared for war, their eyes fixed on the runaway pair, the traitor and the Warbride, the key to a future no one could control. The stars burned red above the battlefield. Fleets of human warships filled the void. Vampire dreadnoughts rose from the shadows. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Both sides prepared for the final war. In the heart of it, hidden in the wilderness of a forgotten world, Daniel and Serafina stood together, the mark on his chest blazing brighter than ever, her crimson eyes glowing like fire, the bond between them alive, stronger than steel, stronger than fear. They knew they could not run forever. The weapon Serafina carried knowledge of, the ancient blade of blood, called to them. It whispered from the ruins buried beneath the mountain, a relic of a time before either humans or vampires ruled the stars. Serafina led the way, her armor scratched, her body weary, yet her will unbroken. Daniel followed, every step echoing with the choice he had made. No longer a soldier of humanity, no longer a pawn of command. He was something else now, something new. At the mountain's heart they found it. The weapon resting on a stone altar, a blade longer than any man, forged from black steel that shimmered with veins of crimson light, the air around it heavy, alive, pulsing with hunger. Serafina's voice trembled for the first time. "This is it, Daniel, the blood fang. The blade that feeds on life. It will end the war, but it will demand everything." Daniel stared at it, his chest burning, the bond pulling him closer, his voice low. "Together, right?" She looked at him, her gaze fierce yet tender. Together, always. As their hands touched the weapon, the bond flared. Light poured from the mark on Daniel's chest. Crimson fire wrapped around them both. The blade awakened with a scream that shook the mountain, a cry of blood and destiny. Above, both human and vampire fleets felt it. Captains shouting, alarms blazing, commanders screaming orders. "They've found it. They've awakened it." Panic spread. Fear spread. And the fleets moved, converging on the planet. The mountain split as the blade rose into the air. Carried by the bond, Daniel and Serafina gripping it together, their strength united, their blood burning as one. And then the armies came. Human soldiers dropping in steel pods, vampire warriors descending like shadows. The battlefield became a storm of fire and death, the world itself trembling. Daniel and Serafina stood at the center. Wielding the blood fang, the weapon roared with every swing, cutting through armor, burning through claws. No enemy could stand before them. Yet every strike drained them. Every clash pulled at their lives. The humans cried out, "Traitor!" As they fired, the vampires screamed, "Oathbreaker!" as they attacked. Both sides united only in hatred of the pair who dared to choose love over loyalty. But Daniel and Serafina did not falter. Back to back, heart to heart, their voices roared as one. "We are not your prey, we are not your slaves. We are more." The blood fang blazed, a wave of crimson fire sweeping across the battlefield. Ships in orbit trembled. The sky itself cracked with the force of the bond. For one moment, humans and vampires alike froze, blinded by the power of something they could not understand. And in that silence, Daniel looked at Serafina, sweat and blood streaking her face, her crimson eyes softer than ever. "If this is the end," he whispered, "I don't regret it." She smiled faintly, a rare, fragile smile. "Nor do I," she whispered back. The blade demanded more, the bond burning hotter, their bodies breaking under the strain. Daniel felt his strength fading, Serafina's grip weakening, yet still they held on. Still they fought, still they stood. The choice was clear now. They could unleash the weapon fully, shatter both armies, end the war with one final strike. But the cost would be their lives. Their bond consumed, their bodies burned to ash. Daniel met her eyes, no words needed. The choice was already made. Together they raised the blood fang high. Crimson fire erupted, a storm of light and shadow. The battlefield drowned in its fury. Ships in orbit shattered, warriors on the ground thrown aside like dust. The sky split open with a scream of blood and love. When the light faded, silence returned. The armies scattered, ships retreating, soldiers trembling, both sides broken, both sides terrified. For the Warbride and the human had become something greater, something untouchable. And in the center of the battlefield, the blood fang lay silent once more. The altar cracked, the mountains smoking. But Daniel and Serafina were gone. No bodies, no ashes, only the faint glow of the bond burned into the stone. Whispers spread across the galaxy. Some said they had died as martyrs, their love the spark that ended the war. Others claimed they had ascended, becoming spirits bound to the stars, guardians of peace, a legend born from blood. Among humans they were remembered as traitor and warbride. Among vampires they were cursed as oathbreaker and prey lover. But in secret songs and hidden prayers they were remembered as what they truly were, the bond that chose love in a universe built on hate. And so the story ended where it began, with a joke spoken under firelight, a careless wish for a wife. Yet that joke rewrote the destiny of two worlds. For Daniel, the soldier who longed for love, and Serafina, the warbride who longed for peace, became the legend of the war of love and blood.